Madam President and members of the Senate, Mr. Speaker and members of the House of Assembly. Bermuda, like many other countries, has been through very challenging times since 2008. Profoundly affected by the global economic downturn, Bermuda's people have been tested, their lives altered in ways like never before. It is your government's hope that Bermudians stand stronger together as a people and as a more cohesive community. Your government's investment and stimulus measures, like the YES initiative, the Tri-30 Work Experience initiative, and the Job Corps program, have stood strong when there was the need to stand firm. Madam President and members of the Senate, Mr. Speaker and members of the House of Assembly, Government has adopted a medium-term fiscal strategy to restore a positive primary balance on its main operating account. The medium-term fiscal strategy, together with efficiency measures, will re-establish Bermuda's long-standing policy of borrowing only for long-term capital projects and thereby contribute toward deficit and debt reduction. To provide more economic stimulus, government is extending the economic empowerment zones, creating 3 new zones in Northwest Hamilton, Middletown and North Village, and extending the existing North Hamilton zone. There will be 6 economic empowerment zones in Bermuda, zones which should afford much needed relief and support to entrepreneur and other small businesses and generate jobs. There is a goal of doubling the number of tourists that arrive by air in the next decade. That would result in double the tax revenue and a 5% annual growth in GDP. To further stimulate necessary investment in this area and to also encourage less seasonality of our visitors, the government will provide a form of residency to those tourists who invest in Bermuda through the purchase of tourism-zoned units connected to their ownership of new and existing product constructed to aid in our tourism recovery. The centerpiece of our tourism plan is the Tourism Development Act. The new act will replace the Hotels Concession Act of 2000 and include a broader range of concessions to tourism investors. Mr. Speaker and members of the House of Assembly, the Ministry of Environment, Planning and Infrastructure strategy is implementing the first phase of a Bermuda agriculture strategy. Your government invites you to bolster that initiative and bolster the retraining program at Bermuda College, which has been a tremendous success in giving our people 21st century skills for a 21st century economy. Government is already creating smart green technology zones and incentives for their use. A study will be undertaken to assess the feasibility of utilizing part of the airport lands as a site for the installation of alternative renewable energy technologies. In keeping with the promise of more red carpet and less red tape, the government will continue to streamline immigration practices to provide an environment that encourages businesses to invest in Bermuda and continues to preserve Bermuda's position as a jurisdiction of choice for international business. Using available technology, the government will reduce the reliance on paper forms, eliminate duplications in vetting procedures, and reduce the turnaround time for the production of Bermuda passports. The government will meet the challenge of preserving secure borders in an efficient, user-friendly manner. Madam President and members of the Senate, Mr. Speaker and members of the House of Assembly, your government considers health as a major social priority policy. Some of Bermuda's best and brightest minds are working on creative and bold solutions to a myriad of thorny healthcare issues, including benefit packages, reimbursement models, and so on. And in the coming months, government will enlist the public's input. If you know of ways to cut healthcare costs, your input is welcomed by the government. Government proposes to improve its health insurance products. HIP and Future Care have been tremendously successful. As a result, the Ministry of Health will take the necessary steps to add a prescription drug benefit for future care to allow 100% of the cost of generic drugs to be covered. Trade name prescription drugs will be covered at 80% as they are now, and the annual limit of $2,000 will also be retained. For HIP and future care policyholders who are also on financial assistance, the full cost of general practitioner visits will be paid, replacing the current co-pay requirement for the policyholder. Each parish council will create a Hall of Fame to celebrate past sporting heroes, and all Olympians and Paralympians, past and present, will be honoured with bricks bearing their names in the walkway at the National Sports Centre. A special provision, a bronze statue in a special location, will be made for Olympic legend Clarence Hill. It is simply the right thing to do. Government will set a concrete date for reopening the St George Golf Course and ensure that only Bermudians will be employed in landscaping the course and managing the concessions. And in keeping with its guiding principle to help people and institutions, your government has determined to provide assistance to the Bermuda Industrial Union Credit Union. The mission of the credit union is to promote the economic interests of its members. In these testing economic times, members of the BIU Credit Union have sought assistance from their cooperative in large numbers. The credit union has struggled to respond while minding the discipline of its fiduciary requirements. To assist the credit union in its time of need, your government will provide the credit union with grant funding in the new fiscal year. The Ministry of Youth, Families and Sport will continue the Mirrors programme to serve the needs of youth aged 15 to 18 years by challenging them to achieve productive outcomes that are free from gang activity and antisocial behaviour through its community training sessions. As part of its mandate to promote youth development, the Ministry of Youth, Family and Sports is engaged in discussions with the YMCA for the establishment of various turnkey youth development programs in Bermuda. Since 1965, the Bermuda Regiment has formed an integral part of Bermuda's internal security management. The strength of the organisation makes it ideally suited for modernisation, and the Bermuda Regiment is uniquely qualified to manage change. The government will further amend the Defence Act 1965 to provide for an expanded full-time element in the regiment and an end to conscription. Bermuda's Human Rights Act 1981 no longer meets the standard for human rights in a 21st century democracy. The government proposes, therefore, to replace the outdated act in this parliamentary session with a new, broadly based bill that will address protection against discrimination for a range of characteristics, including age and sexual orientation. Madam President and members of the Senate, Mr. Speaker and members of the House of Assembly, the government will consider or implement the following administrative policies in the coming year. To propose to His Excellency the Governor the establishment of a judicial complaints authority to address complaints from the public, which currently is denied the right to seek redress in circumstances of abuse of power by adjudicators. It will bring Bermuda in line with other modern, reputable jurisdictions. To create an independent Department of Court Administration to give the administrative arm of the judiciary greater autonomy. Also to propose to His Excellency the Governor the creation of a standing Judicial Service Committee to advise the Governor on judicial appointments, terms and conditions of service and disciplinary matters as an informal alternative to a constitutional Judicial Service Commission. The government will prudently assess whether a decrease to the current Bermuda statutory interest rate is a viable option to aid long-term financial hardships for low-income debtors in the current climate? Or would alternative relief programmes, either prescribed by the Legislature or supported by government, be a better option? Madam President and members of the Senate, Mr. Speaker and members of the Honourable House of Assembly, I declare this session of the Legislature open, and may God guide you and grant you wisdom in your deliberations.